Well, yeehaw, Sherry Rayn
Yes.
Barnett. Welcome back to Living on Music, my dear.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much. It's great to see you. It was so much fun
I,
the first time.
it is. It is wonderful to see you, and we did have a fun run with some of your members of your Mustangs of the West Band, and that was a really fun ride. I got to learn though during that part of research of my life for that show and things, and since then, what an incredible person you are, and this amazing talent. You have it on guitar, but you have it also behind the camera. And we're going to be talking about the Sherry Rayn Barnett world of music photography. I've got a quote about music, and it goes into what you guys do. Music is the beating heart of popular culture. No matter what genres you enjoy, music makes us happy, makes us sing, and makes us dance. Now, that I think that's true for both of us and a lot of
Yes,
people we know. But even
yes.
music fanatics can't go to every concert by every band, and that's why music photographers are so important. They capture the dynamic moments from the hottest and most memorable moments, and they also give us a glimpse behind the curtain. Um, Names I've known for many years: Annie Leibovitz, obviously, Danny Clinch, Jake Blacksburg, all these other photographers in my music life.
Mhm.
I even have Frank Stefanko. I don't know if you know his name. He took pictures of Bruce
Yeah.
Springsteen for his The River and Darkness on the Edge of Town records covers. Amazing guy. There's some local people, Beth Harrison. But Sherry Rayn Barnett, what a world it is. Talk to me a minute right now in your life, what music photography feels to you at this time of your life.
Well, that's very interesting. It actually is a thread that has held my life together since I was a teenager. The
Great.
music came before, but then the music photography
Right.
came when I started in high school. I started shooting in high school, but I also had a little brownie camera that was blue that
Right.
um, I would take with me. My parents would take me to different. There were like rock and roll shows and stuff, and it's very funny because I was so short, so I have a few of those pictures, and not only are they blurry, but they're like way up here. You
Oh
can,
God.
but
Beginning your run.
yes, but when I was in high school, I was going to school for music and I was
Right.
majoring in classical guitar. I
Right.
was going to the Fame School and what later became the Fame School. And
Yes.
uh, and I would go at night, it was in Manhattan. So at night, I would go down to the um, Greenwich Village clubs.
Right.
And there was access then. We don't have the same kind of access anymore. And uh, it was easier to get little assignments, and I'd make $25 if my photograph was published in one of the underground music papers. And and the people that were playing there were absolutely amazing because they were people that were up and coming, but they were still playing the
Right.
smaller venues, the
Sure.
intimate venues. So it was, I just kind of walk up to the stage, and Bonnie Raitt would be playing a resonator guitar, or Jerry Jeff Walker, Eric Anderson, uh, even Carly Simon just before her career really broke for her.
Right.
Uh, there was so much happening everywhere.
Wow.
And the Village Gate, and then with I didn't go there as much, but it was like Nina Simone, for
Right.
example, and I'd photograph her there.
And you
Uh,
still feel that magic today as you did as you were building your talent too?
oh, absolutely. I mean, if I'm passionate about an artist or I'm passionate, I will. That's the kind of thing. When artists get really huge, I don't follow them as much or follow them with a camera because it's a whole different world now. It's
Right. Right.
there's not the same access that we had. And also I love the discovery of new, it's not just new talent, but it's new
Oh,
music.
yes.
So
No, that's fabulous. And the things that have been going on for you, we're going to get to Eye of the Music right here.
oh, yes.
Wonderful cover, and we'll talk about that wonderful thing because I know that meant a lot to you to to get that out and have it be rolling along now. But you've had some pretty amazing stuff even happening lately with your photography and things, and we'll talk about the growth of it as we go. But you have some wonderful things like the Forum in LA
Oh
has
yeah.
permanent display panels of your images. I mean, that stuff alone is so wonderful. The C.F. Martin Guitar Museum, which I am in a duo with Jess Robinson, and he had at one point, I think, 14 acoustic Martin guitars. He
Oh
went
my
up to
God.
Nazareth. He went there. It was like his exactly. It was like his religion. So I saw that kind of thing. The Rock and Roll Hall of Fame using your photos. How, I
Right.
mean, all of the Linda Ronstadt documentaries with photos in it. The Go-Go's when I interviewed Gina Shock and had and saw that video, and I'm sure your pictures and Laurel Canyon. What does it feel like to have your work be kind of elevated to these kind of levels right now? And right now it's rolling.
Yeah, well, sometimes it goes by really fast. It's like, oh wow, this photograph's in the New York Times or the Los Angeles Times, or fortunate to be in the pages of those esteemed publications.
Right.
But everything's so fast these days, so
Right.
it's I don't dwell on it. I don't dwell on it. But I'm thrilled to have, especially some of my all-time favorite artists. It's great to have them pictured in, those photographs chosen for articles about them.
Oh,
And
totally.
especially historic and archival articles, because those looks of those artists will never happen again. You know,
Right.
there's not going to be another young Joni Mitchell. There's not going to be another young James Taylor. So those artists have lifelong careers. So I wouldn't say it was necessarily them in their prime only, but it's in their just the again discovery of them,
Right.
and
Right.
just have been able to be there. So
Oh, and I love the fact, and you can see right behind you to your left, I believe, is James and Joni, right there. And then what did he just do fairly recently? Chose several rare photographs for his Audible.com memoir, Break Shot. I mean, come
true.
on. You took that
Yeah.
picture so early. Now look, that must kind of get you in the heart to have early use and in your photography life and career, and then now there's a guy who is a legend, and he's using your photography now.
Oh, it was great because I heard that when they were choosing shots, I mean, obviously not just mine, but he did choose multiple photos of mine. And I heard that they set up big screens for him to go through all this archival
Oh,
material. And so that was an honor,
oh,
that
complete honor. I loved hearing that, and also Prince, who again, it was beloved all over the place, and your images were in the Rolling Stone special tribute for Prince too, and those were early images of him. And again, carrying through this career of your photography, and look at they're using it now. And I love Time Magazine running the Jimmy Buffett photo for the
oh
for
yeah, yeah, yeah.
I mean, that was amazing, and we'll talk a little bit about some of those specific experiences that you had with these people because I wanna get into those so much. Um, 2020,
Yes.
that amazing year, and it was funny. My Raiders moved to Las Vegas in 2020, so I have this hat that says 2020 Raiders moved, and then I'm like, oh, people are gonna look at 2020 going, no, that was when we were all of this. Anyway,
Yeah.
2020. Eye of the Music, published by New Galleon Press, came out. Now, how long was that in um, Sherry Rayn Barnett's mind to try to get a book out with encompassing, and boy, we'll talk about what some people have said about it, encompassing your music photography career?
Well, it had been on the back burner for a dozen years.
Yeah.
um, a friend of mine back then said, you need to do this book while the people who are going to be in it and be interested in it are still around, which was, kind of prophetic. And that was back then. That was back then,
Hurry.
losing so many of our artists now. Uh,
Totally.
so I'm really, I was really happy to finally get that happening. And fortunately, it's kind of a funny story because I had wanted to do this book. I had written the introduction, and I'd actually gone around and gotten endorsements from, kind of, visible friends friends of mine, and a couple of which I just found recently. I went, oh my God, they wrote that, for the book back, 12 years before it came out.
Oh, that's
And
wonderful.
and so um, it just was a kind of a fluke because I have to say I have to give thanks. There was a photographer named Harold Sherrick who is in back east also at now, and he had an exhibit somewhere that I went to support him, and he had just come out with a book, and his publishers were there, and he introduced me, and they ended up looking at my work and went, oh my God, we really want to do this book.
Oh, fabulous. So they took
Yes.
they took an overview look and said, "Yep."
Yeah, so it was, but what was interesting, the timing of it was I was right in the middle of about to do this tour with Mustangs of the West. We were doing South by Southwest and doing all this. And I said, I can't do this right now. It's just it's not the right time, but I really
Right.
want. And then the pandemic hit and everything stopped. And they said, okay, let's do the book. And I
Wow.
absolutely. So, with the help of one of my favorite cats as my assistant, my
Yay.
tuxedo cat, um, we worked on that book like, kind of nonstop for, a number of months. And I kept uncovering more and more material that I didn't even remember I had. And then, of course, there was material I couldn't find because that's what happens. You're not like, no one's 100%
Right. Right.
organized. So it was a very interesting process, and I was very grateful to these independent publishers at the time for actually pushing me into doing something that I'd wanted to get done for so long. And when we were doing it, the book just kept getting bigger, and finally they said we should only do 2 decades. We'll do these
Wow.
these two classic decades because otherwise the book won't be affordable. And
Right.
so since then, I actually have taken the book back. I actually publish it myself now. We, parted ways amicably, but and then I just added a section. It was very funny actually because when we were doing the book, it was like I said, well, I have these pictures of the individual Beatles, but I don't have, I was too young to have the Beatles all together. So
Oh yeah.
but it was at a point that we were so full up on, the pages of the book that he said, well, we really can't add anything now. So I said, oh, that's fine. And then in retrospect, some friends of mine said, well, you did your book and you left the Beatles out? It doesn't make any sense. So I have a new edition of the book that has, bonus content and
Oh,
add,
wonderful.
added a few Beatles pages at the back
Oh,
because,
I think I got a glimpse of that. Yeah, I think you
oh
sent
yes,
me.
I
Yeah,
think,
that was some amazing stuff to see. Just to see any
yeah, it was
pictures.
just, it was rare stuff. It was some rare stuff that hadn't been seen. I didn't necessarily, we're all very self-critical, and I didn't think, well, these aren't the absolute best shots. It's not like the killer shot of Tina Turner or Joplin or
Right.
behind you, Miles Davis or Annie Lennox or
Yes. Yeah,
but I went,
absolutely.
but it's valuable history, and that a lot of it is really about documenting the history and archiving it in a way that can be shared with people that you know get get to either revisit it or didn't know it existed,
Oh. No,
because it's
that's just it's wonderful. I had looked at that and there's really a 2 decade kind of overview of your iconic performers that you did. The things that some of the people have said. You got Bill Bentley talking about the book is worth 1 million words. I'm like, whoa.
Bill's great.
Yeah, and as a feast for eyes and souls, you got the Manhattan Transfer, Cheryl Benton talking about Sherry as a brilliant photographer, shines on a soulful level. I mean, those are wonderful kind of wonderful critiques
I'll
of
tell
what
you, I reached out to Cheryl because
nice.
over the years we become acquainted, become friends, I guess, because of the various shoots I've done of the group. And so I reached out to her. I literally reached out to her in a message and I said, is there something that you could, come up with? And she got back to me like within 5 minutes and she wrote that. It just came out. And I was like, I was like, okay, this is perfect. And then when I was working with the publisher, he said, well, let's put this on the back of the book, which was not even meant to be, but it was perfect. What she said was wonderful and
I
made
do
me.
love that. She shines on a soulful level, catching that perfect moment between breaths of her subject. That is so wonderful. That just seems again, Sherry. That just seems like something. It has to be one of the top kind of achievements and triumphs in your life to get that book out that shows what you did. Because I've looked through a lot of what it does, and it makes me just ecstatic because of the people you shot and the way you do it. How does that book make you feel deep down?
Well, it's just a huge accomplishment. It's a legacy book, and uh, for the artists in it, and for me because um, that I didn't realize what a prime time of life that was covering.
Right.
It was. Um, the whole thing is, there's span of other decades too, but as far as having a book, um, that actually depicts what was going on at that time. A lot of people who have gotten the book, it's funny. I love some of the responses that are uh, people connect to it, not just because they love those artists, but there are people who actually were at some of those shows
Oh,
or at a different show from the tour,
yes.
and which is kind of wonderful. Uh,
Totally.
yeah, and then there's my God, there's like new generations who've never seen the work, and they love it. I love it when young people really take to the book and really connect with the images. Uh,
Right.
so and then there are people I look at it as a book of photographs, but there are people that have come back to me or come back to me with their comments or get in touch with me, and they love the stories. And I
Yeah.
think of it as a storybook. And the first interview I did, actually, it was with Jay Blakesberg. As far as an online interview, and he said, "Oh, I want to talk to you about all the people that you photograph that and tell the personal stories." And I'm thinking, well, I am I capture moments on stage. I do other photography, but that
Right.
has been that's been my thing.
Hmm.
And I don't know all these people. I know some of them. But as it turned out, just getting into what the culture was like at the time, just getting into what point in career of their career I was capturing, it ends up for interesting stories without having to know them personally. And you know, there are some funny stories.
Oh, totally. That's a massive, even an embellishment on your amazing photography is to have stories about it. And I'm gonna ask you for some of those amazing short little nuances
Okay.
about some of those amazing stories as we go along. Before that, though, after 2020 and your book was out, you're still, waiting to kind of probably get out of your house and do some more stuff with Mustangs and stuff. But your photos were featured in Rolling Stone and Life magazine special editions. Now, Rolling Stone isn't doing their regular edition anymore. The I don't get it in the mail anymore. It's only online.
Oh, I didn't even know that.
Yeah, I was shocked. It happened about maybe a year or so ago, and I'm like, oh my God, that magazine was so much a part of my life going forward, and that's to have your photos featured in there in Life magazine, the New York Times, and LA Times. So here you go. The last 3 years, your work is continuing to be imaged. You got the wonderful thing at the Prince's first LA performance that has been seen at the exhibit at the Grammy Museum, which had to be a wonderful thing. Historic photos feature with the Joni Mitchell retrospective exhibit. So this just shows again the history of your work continues to grow as people celebrate their lives and careers. I love that. What have been some of the best things to you in the last few years?
Well, I love to continue to shoot. And uh I'm no longer involved in like the large venues and the arena kind of. It wasn't really my thing to begin with. I
Right,
suppose I could have made a lot more money, but I didn't do
right,
this. I was so um, focused again on a smaller venue where they weren't all smaller venues. I should take that back, but where the audience really connects with the artist, and so I continue to. I still shoot, and I shoot at festivals, sometimes
Nice.
lesser known festivals, um, performing arts centers where, where the production values are really beautiful.
Right.
I just photographed Dionne Warwick and Sergio Mendes before he passed,
Right.
and then Judy Collins. I
Right.
continued to photograph her, made a really, really nice connection with her.
Mm.
I have a copy of my book actually that is very special to me because as I connect with people since the book has been published, certain artists, they signed it for me. So
Oh, nice.
I have a very special copy with that Joni has signed and Judy Collins, Eric Anderson, Dionne Warwick.
Oh,
Yeah, and
no.
even, uh, a singer who became a friend, Leah Kunkel, who before she just had an untimely passing, but
Yes.
he signed my book and just wrote, a beautiful inscription. So,
Wow.
uh, so it's interesting to just continue without, as I'm doing Mustangs of the West too.
Right.
I'm kind of dividing my time up, so I'm not doing as much shooting. But that's why it's been important to get the book out, and
Absolutely.
at this point, I mean, it's you know, I'm very grateful for having the publisher initially who made this happen. Um, but now I'm, basically doing my own distribution, selling it through my website, and not through you know, the big box stores and
Oh,
not
God.
that there's anything wrong with it. It's just that the chunk of change that they take really makes it impossible to print the book.
Oh, totally. I would be remiss if I obviously didn't mention what we had chit-chatted about prepping for this interview was your appearance of the Bonnie Raitt picture at the Kennedy Center honor ceremony, and I am such a huge fan of her, such an amazing longtime fan. I'm also Godfather's my favorite film, so it was Francis Ford Coppola was there that day too. Then you had
Oh
the
yeah,
Apollo, which they don't ever really do venues to honor, which I
that
was
was a
stunned.
first. That was a first.
And they
Yeah.
had the Apollo of all places, but the see your picture come up on that stage and in that film, I was like, damn, there it goes again. Here's her work continuing to roll along. And we're going to talk a little bit about what's coming up because I know there's a kind of a fun thing coming up in May for you and some other things. But let's talk just briefly about how Sherry got the camera in her brain because I love the story about picking up the blue brownie camera as a little pre-teener, and
Yeah.
they take you to those shows. What did
Yeah.
the camera do to you early? Did it get to you early, and why did you pick up the camera at all?
Well, I don't know a precise answer to that, except
Mhm.
that I was, I mean, what happened was my dad had these old Voigtlander cameras that he let me play around with, and I'd go out. I thought I wanted to be a nature photographer. I'd go out, and I grew up in New York City. I'd go out and take pictures of snow. I took pictures of my cats. I took pictures of anything I could at first, but because I grew up. Taking music lessons. My mom was a dancer. I had to take some of her dance classes, and also, uh, I loved music, and she gave me my music lessons. She made sure I had music lessons all along. And once I started being able to even just like go with my parents to shows, it's like I think I wanted to capture something. I wanted to bring something home with me. You
Oh,
know, I wanted to have the memory last of what
yeah.
had just inspired me, and it was fun. It was fun to actually see people perform um, live. And not just listen to records.
Oh,
So,
absolutely. That's so funny because again, I am not. I took a lot of pictures in my life of at concerts, and there was some that I really loved, but it was never a profession for me. But as a
right,
kid, I did the same thing. I'd take a picture of the Outlaws concert or the Marshall Tucker Band,
yeah.
Allman Brothers. I was a huge Southern rock fan in
Oh,
Connecticut, and bring home the pictures and just can't wait till they're developed and then see wow we were there and so
oh
I
yeah.
guess you felt that as a young music person growing into that. With also music was a big deal for you. And when did music start into your heart too at that age, at that time of life?
Oh, well, my mom was, she had way more discipline than I do. She would do her piano practicing every day, her dance practice every
Right.
day. She gave dance lessons. It was like first thing, going back, first thing I don't know why, I wanted to play the accordion and I was too small. So we started on piano lessons.
Wow.
And really wasn't a keyboard player, but as soon as my accordion teacher started teaching folk guitar, it was like, oh, and I got very much into folk music, and I got
Oh,
very much into, um, it was funny because I ended up going from a nylon string classical guitar to electric guitar. I never had a steel string guitar for many, many years. Uh,
right.
it was just a kind of there were just stages and abrupt shifts. And but yeah, I mean, there was always music at the house. Um, there was always inspiration. And my mom also wrote songs. She didn't really get any, I mean, she had a B-side of something, but she would go and shop her songs and take me by the hand, and we'd go to Manhattan together. And she
Right.
taught music in the building that became the David Letterman building, which is now uh, whatever it,
Right.
is it Jimmy Fallon? I don't know, but
Yeah.
yeah. So I grew up going to those places, and
Oh.
my mom had, she had friends that later on I realized she had these friends. She had early rock people like Nino Tempo and April Stevens, and then she had friends that wrote "Do you hear what I hear?"
Oh.
Gloria Shane and Noel Regney. What did I know? I was just a little kid,
Oh my God.
Yeah.
Well,
So
so music was developing. Photography, though, started to seem to really kind of
in high school for
amp
me.
up in high school.
Yeah,
Exactly.
yeah.
And
That's when I got my first real camera and got
right. When
my
did you start shooting for the underground papers?
when I was in high school.
That's right, when you were in high school.
So
That's what I thought.
yeah.
And that was that right. And that prompted this assignment, which you have continued to talk about with Ike and Tina Turner in concert, and later at the Chelsea for the interview. What was that like?
Well, that was amazing. I mean, I knew who Ike and Tina were by then. It was like, this is what an incredible opportunity.
And how
Uh,
old were you, Sherry?
how
At
old
that,
was I?
how
It's
old were you
probably
there? So
17,
17. Phenomenal opportunity, though. My God.
right? I guess 16. Yeah, and I was uh but did the shoot of their show in the East Village, but then the editor of the paper was going to be interviewing them, and I just I went. I didn't know until later that was the Chelsea Hotel, you know, and I mean there are other photographers that have been around that I know spent time there, knew all these people, photographed. Um, uh, Even Janis Joplin there and stuff. But for me, I was so young, and it was just like my one-time experience. But it was
Did
the first shoot that I did, and
right? Did you
maybe
get did you get a sense of any animosity? Because we all know what Ike Turner was like
oh
eventually.
oh. Well, here's the deal: the Tina slept through most of the interview.
Oh,
And so these pictures that I have of Ike is sitting on the end of the bed talking, and there's this blob behind him laying in the bed. And they were both in these matching faux leopard robes and pajama outfits. And,
oh,
when I've looked at the proof sheet, looking at all the negatives, it's like I see his amplifier sitting in the side of the room. And she did wake up and she's just kind of looking at the paper that I was shooting for, and the editor was writing the article about. But really, there was very little connection with her because she just basically woke up at the end of it. There didn't seem to have been anything gone awry before that in lieu.
right.
But of course, all that information came out much later
Yes,
about.
it did. And what a wonderful experience for you at that age to kind of kick things off pretty well as a teenager. I love how it was quoted, you're chronicling the artist, redefining what pop music was as the 60s gave way to the 70s. for various underground magazines, and the early iconic photographs, not only that you had just talked about, but Joni Mitchell and James Taylor, which is right behind you, could not have been bigger rising people. Talk a little bit about that experience and that wonderful picture that will show full and is also right behind you.
Oh, that is just a uh, fantastic experience that happened because and people think that I photographed them. That was a show at Queens College, and I actually grew up in Queens. And
Yay.
people in retrospect thought I was going to Queens College and attended that show.
Well,
But
I'm a lifetime Mets fan, so
oh, okay, yeah, 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 yeah.
there you
Chase.
go.
Um, anyway, I wasn't. I was in high school. I didn't go to Queens College. I was in
Right,
high school.
right.
And I chose, I would go in there was a publication, it was called Rock Magazine. And
Okay.
Rock Magazine wasn't really a magazine, it was a newspaper, but it didn't matter. They kind of gave me my real start because I would go, Lenny Kaye was a writer. I would
Wow.
go in the office and he'd be behind a typewriter.
Oh,
Um,
typewriter. Yay.
yes, it was a
We
typewriter. And
remember those. Yes.
yeah, as a matter of fact, a boy that I went to performing out to the Fame School with became Patti Smith's keyboard player.
Oh,
And so, and it was Patti Smith and this guy named Richard Soul,
wow.
and Lenny Kaye. And
Oh,
unfortunately, Richard, he was a friend. He unfortunately OD'd, like people did back then.
oh.
And but jumping from that, it was like, I would go into the Rock Magazine office and I would literally ask them if I could shoot this show or that show,
Oh,
you know.
great.
And
God.
in retrospect, I didn't do a lot of the really big rock bands, like most of the guys did and chose. But I went, oh, I want to go see James Taylor. I'd like to photograph that show. So that show was just an iconic show, incredible show, because again, realizing later that Carole King opened for him, right? He came out and did You've Got a Friend with Her. And and she apparently did the entire Tapestry album.
Oh,
What did I
really?
know? I wasn't even paying that much attention. I was waiting for James Taylor to come on. I
Oh
mean, I
my
did pay attention, but I shot like two pictures of her.
God. That's classic though. My God. Nice little extra bonus.
Well, and then the double bonus was when he brings Joni Mitchell out
Oh,
to do You Can Close Your Eyes as an encore. And that's where
and
the pictures came from. And
and where
there weren't any other photographers there as far as I know. Because
so where was she in her career at that
she
point?
was she was
I think she had a couple, at least a couple
she was
albums.
doing well. She was doing well because I around the same time I photographed her at the I always called it the Central Park Music Festival, but I guess officially it was called the Schaefer Music Festival because Schaefer Beer was the sponsor.
Oh,
And you
wow.
know, but we all knew it as the Central Park Music Festival that went on for I think a couple of decades. But
Wow.
I shot there for a few years, and they had absolutely amazing artists. From Joni Mitchell that you could go see for $3 a ticket
Oh,
to the Birds, and there were a lot of people that I actually missed there. But I also photographed a number of people that were just, I Miles Davis and John Denver, and they were people that had they weren't playing like Madison Square Garden yet, but they were playing bigger venues. They were no
right.
longer small clubs. So
Yeah, and around that time too, the Bonnie Raitt picture that I mentioned, where was that shot?
the Gaslight Cafe.
Oh, cafe. Oh my God.
Cafe, yeah, oh yeah, the Gaslight
That's
was just
so
it
great.
was just a small, um, intimate club around the corner from the Bitter End. There was the Cafe A Go Go. There was the Cafe Wa. They were all cafes except the Bitter End.
Right.
But the Bitter End had great artists too that were a little more popular maybe than who was playing at the Gaslight at the time.
At the
But
time, that is,
but
but Sherry, it's so wonderful to see you growing in your photography life with these literal legends to us today and have been for decades. And you were growing as they were growing. And it's so amazing that you did kind of say, I want to go shoot these people,
Yeah.
and yeah, there's these other maybe more famous people. Janis Joplin at that age too. She was accelerating. What was the Janis Joplin moment?
Well, I love Janice. I
Yes.
absolutely, I would be, these were the days where you worked in the dark room, and I
Oh
would be
yeah.
in, I would be in
Yay.
the room and I'd put on all my favorite music, of course, and I'd listen
Oh.
to Joplin quite a bit. And then she was going to be playing Forest Hills Tennis Stadium, and I
Oh
grew up in,
yay.
yeah, I grew up
Oh
in Forest Hills.
God. I went to see Neil Diamond there with my mother and father when I was
Oh my
about
God.
16, probably in the mid to early to mid 70s. So around
Wow.
that time generally,
Wow.
my mother
Yeah.
had cancer at the time, ovarian cancer, and she was in treatment and felt okay to go out and do something. And Neil Diamond was her favorite. And it was when he was still rocking. Yeah, he
Yeah.
really had a lot of oomph live, and then he turned a little bit like kind of poppy and Vegasy. But that place it was an amazing thing. I saw the Talking Heads there a number of years later, but it was an
Oh, that's so great.
incredible place.
That's so great. Yeah. So I saw her there, and the only time that I saw her. And it was a similar kind of thing where it was like, okay, we young photographers, for the most part, we weren't rich. We didn't like, oh, I'll go take, I'll grab a dozen rolls of film and go shoot. It was like, well, how many shots can I get on this one roll of film or two
Oh,
rolls of, or one roll of black and white, and one roll of color if I have time. It was it was a whole different time. And so I, fortunately and unfortunately, the Joplin show, I shot one roll of film. I don't know why. I only shot one roll of film, and a third of it was her opening act, the Paul Butterfield Blues Band.
oh,
So,
there you go
so
again. Somebody else that
yeah,
was
so
growing.
so there you go. Yeah, it's like, oh, let me capture the opening act too, but not even to shoot an entire roll. I've had conversations with Henry Dills about this too. He did the
Oh,
same.
uh,
We we it was like we were limited. We were limited. We were young. We didn't have sponsorship. We were, making, such minimal money to get photographs
right,
published.
right,
And but it was a thrill. It was a thrill, and that became, a lot more than a thrill when, now that those moments are so rare and don't
totally,
exist anymore. And some of the people don't exist anymore.
right. No, very
The,
true.
the Forest Hill show with Joplin was one of the last shows she did
I
before she
bet.
died. And she was only around for a couple more months, which was really tragic.
Who
But
knew that librarian type lady from the South? Was she from Texas? And I'm trying to remember where she was originally
Joplin?
from. Janice.
Joplin? Oh
Yeah.
yeah, she was from Texas.
And I remember
And
her, yeah, she was this kind of little meek, sweet little librarian who became one of the most incredible presences. Well, that's again another amazing experience. You moved to LA though in the early 70s. What was the impetus behind that move?
oh, I love the music out here. I just loved the
Wonderful.
music that I had heard growing up in the 60s. I wanted to get closer to.
Right, the
You know,
Byrds,
the
Buffalo
music.
Springfield, right?
Yeah, yeah. It
Mamas
was
and
kind of the music.
Papas.
Right, right. It was kind of, I always loved great harmonies, great melodies, which is probably how I ended up in a band like Mustangs of the West, because the songs are very, very melodic, and um, I love the instrumentations of, the Crosby, Stills and Nashes, and the
Totally.
Springfield and Stephen Stills playing and all that. And I was also listening to an album which is very obscure, but uh I loved this album called Laurel Canyon by
Jackie
Jack.
DeShannon.
Yeah.
Yes.
And so um I'll just do a little aside here that I had just the opportunity to finally meet Jackie a couple of months ago and
Oh,
have lunch with her. And
really?
she's just delightful.
Oh,
And
that is so. We in my duo with my partner Suzanne, we play adult daycare centers 4 times a month, and we sing "Put a Little Love in Your Heart," which was hers. And I'm always mentioning Jackie DeShannon, and there you are doing that. The thing I love about that too, Sherry, is that her album Laurel Canyon you loved then. It
Mhm.
motivated your musical love. And then what happened years later with Laurel Canyon document? Didn't you have a picture or two in
Oh
that
yeah,
thing?
I did. I did.
Come
Yes.
on. There it is again, something bouncing back throughout your.
Right.
I love that. And that was an
Right.
amazing documentary too.
That was, and of course, it was more photographically, it was more represented by Henry Diltz because
Right.
he was like a decade before me.
Sure.
He documented the '60s. I was still too young to do that,
Sure.
um, but the musicians that he documented were the musicians I was listening to back in New York, and uh, I actually um, I actually hitchhiked out here.
Oh my God. I remember that.
Yeah, and
Yeah.
but as a young female, it was probably pretty daring and pretty, even at that time, it was not like necessarily the best idea.
Yeah, it's got a little
Except that
bit of
I'm
a
here.
little bit of a risk. But hey, living on the edge. Speaking of living on the edge, I mean, you were continuing to shoot as the staff photographer for the rock magazine,
Yeah, I did.
freelancing for Crawdaddy, which I knew of,
Yeah,
Cream. I mean, all
yeah,
these things that I was well aware of because I was such a big. I mean, this is what's so exciting for me. Not only because I like you, and we also have the Mustangs of the West thing we talked about, but just I've been such a huge fan of music photography over the years. To
playing music is actually very different from photographing it because even though there is a commonality and a thread, um, I was a lone wolf photographer.
right,
I didn't work with anybody. I didn't have an assistant. I didn't work with, for a group
right,
or anything. So I did that on my own. And then music is so fluid, you know, and to be able to play with people and, have that a whole different connection, uh,
sure.
was, that made total sense to me. So
Oh, I love that. That's a neat blend in doing the music, and you're rocking along as that solo photog. You had an amazing run again too, from what I've been able to look through. Is a young Linda Ronstadt, who's right there behind me. You had the hippie angel, Emmy Lou Harris,
oh
who
gosh,
has
yes.
again continued again. I got to interview her and Steve Earle together, sitting outside a restaurant in DC about 7 or 8 years ago, and she was something else. She rolled a cigarette while we were starting to talk, and I'm like,
Did you really?
was that a joint? And what are you doing? But it was actually a regular cigarette. And I'm like, I didn't even know she smoked. But she was an amazing lady.
Wow.
What were these? Were these just with different kinds of magazines? You got the Jackson Brown pictures. You've the Carpenters, which I loved. What were some of the high moments in a nutshell of some of these wild things? And obviously continuing the upheaval of Go-Go's, Prince, Eurythmics. This was a wild time for you to really jump into some more photogs.
Well, I was out there all the time. I mean, I was doing several shoots a week, and
Oh,
um, yeah, it was great because there were so many people whose music I just loved that I was able to photograph and uh, yeah, and sometimes the oddball gig like the Linda Ronstadt Linda Ronstadt that you see there is at USC. It was a college show. It wasn't like she was playing. And later, I photographed her at the Forum. You
yeah.
know, and I'd photographed her at Town Hall in New York. I mean, there were a number of different shoots, and I didn't know her personally. I still really don't, although. I did through a friend get a copy of the book to her, and she said she said that she found the work very impressive, and but
Jeez.
I haven't used it as a quote. It's just I was just very very happy to hear that.
Right.
I didn't say, hey, can I, whatever, and maybe I should have, but
Right.
I'm
That's,
just very happy about that, and.
I
Uh,
bet.
but there were just, so many amazing artists that, we weren't thinking, oh, they're going to be iconic. They're going to be legends. They were just doing such great music and that lasts a lifetime and beyond, so
Right.
uh,
Totally.
it was, I just loved it. I don't think I ever got tired then.
No, it doesn't seem it. And it seemed like the photography thing was really motoring for you. I mean, I love, continuing to photograph artists when they were just starting out, kind of at Greenwich Village clubs. And you're, again, some of those people that have turned into people that we've loved for our entire lives that you're shooting. The 80s, you became a photographer for the Hollywood Reporter, continued to go through there. The 87 was Top of the Pops.
Yep.
Well, I mean, how did that come to bear?
Oh, I don't even know how I got that gig, but I was that was shooting for Top of the Pops really is a highlight of anything that I've done. Um, unfortunately, it was just one season.
Yes, and I didn't even know there was an American Top of the Pops. I thought it was always UK.
You can find a few of those videos
Oh,
on YouTube. Not a lot, not a lot,
wow.
but they had anyone who had a record, topping the charts.
Right.
They had the artists, and what was so fantastic was that they weren't lip syncing. I mean, if it was a singer like David Bowie, he did sing to a track, but he sang live.
Wow.
If somebody didn't bring their band, but most of them were live bands. I mean, anyone from good Lord, um, Joe Cocker,
Oh,
all the people, David Bowie, of course.
oh,
Uh, so many people on that show,
oh.
and Natalie Cole. I mean, I'm blanking on all the. I mean, I could go down a whole list if
Oh, I
I.
bet. I bet. I mean, that is a legendary name of anything, let alone there was one US run in the late 80s. You did some had you done any album covers before you did the ones for Shirley Horn, Marlena Shaw, and Nina Simone?
I had done like independent artists,
Oh, neat.
people that you probably wouldn't have heard of. Some folk artists like Mary McCaslin.
Okay.
Uh, did some stuff early for I can't remember if that was Sugar Hill Records or a different indie label.
Right.
Uh, and then Sugar Hill called me when uh, Nickel Creek got
Oh.
signed, and literally uh, where I'm sitting, where you can't really see, the living room, I did the first Nickel Creek uh, promo photos.
Oh,
And
wonderful. God.
and I can tell you about that. I mean, you know, uh, they were so young, and but Chris Thiele, he never, the entire time that they were here, he never stopped playing. He'd walk around, he'd be playing his mandolin, whatever, all the time, and it just the music just pours out of that guy. He's a
Oh,
genius.
God, that is great.
But I remember we were going to go to another location, which we did, and uh, I had a convertible, and I took them in the convertible, and it was like, oh my God, this is the first time we've ridden in a convertible. I remember that about the shoot. It was
You're
very
like,
fun,
wow, there's no roof on the car.
right? They were very nice, and then I ended up shooting for I guess not the 90s, the early 2000s, I guess, early I was photographing a festival called the Four Corners Folk Festival.
Nice.
And apparently Nickel Creek had grown up on that festival. I mean, they've
Oh.
been playing there since they were little kids. And so that was really fun. That there were so many great artists there, like Gillian Welch and anything from Gillian. I mean, they were, again, these are people that, just personally, I love the genre of acoustic music and
Hmm.
um, some bluegrass, but just, fusion, even like folk.
Totally.
I mean, they had like Eileen Ivers, Irish fiddler, and they had Delbert, from her to Delbert McClinton to Delbert McCory to
Wow.
again Nickel Creek and Gillian Welch and on and on.
Oh
John.
my gosh.
So I did that for 7 years, even though I lived in LA, and it was always the highlight of my year. I mean, that was the thing that came along. I think after Top of the Pops, it was very different, and it was a decade later or so. But I just I just immersed myself in that festival.
Oh,
Uh,
that's fabulous.
so that was
What was the private session with Nina Simone like?
it was great. It
Was
was
it?
great, but it was a sharp contrast to the first Nina Simone session,
Oh.
which wasn't so great. But came up with, I would have to say, of my top five photographs that I've done ever. Was that I have it right here, the album cover um,
Oh,
for
yay.
an album called Let It Be Me, and
Wow.
it was live at it was recorded live at a club here in LA that was a fabulous little club called the Vine Street Bar and Grill on Vine Street.
Wow.
And a friend of mine played there and booked it, and then they hired her to produce this series of albums. And I mean, I was down at the club photographing people, doing lights, doing everything, just kind of immersed in that scene for a while.
Right. Right.
And but Nina was having some issues when we were doing that album cover shoot, and we waited for her at least two or three times longer than it took to actually do the shoot and spend time with her.
Oh,
Uh, and I've told stories about it before, but she was a bit difficult. And then so I was quite surprised when um, the guy who was representing her, managing her, called me and said, she was Dr. Nina at that
right.
time. Dr. Nina would like you to come do a private session for her because she needs a photograph for the Olympia Opera House in Paris for a poster. So anyway, so
Whoa.
so I went to her this time, and said her coming to my house, my home studio. I went to her Hollywood apartment, and she was delightful. She was just absolutely delightful, and really good mood, very wonderful to work with. And I just felt compelled to ask her. And I said, Dr. Nina, I noticed a change since the last time we got together. I said, you seem to be very, very happy. And she said, yeah, I got the IRS off my back.
Oh, God. Wow.
We knew it was more than just the IRS.
Really, God. That's incredible.
So,
Wow. As you went through the 90s, it was Martin Guitars, which we talked a little bit about before, which is wonderful to have your stuff be a permanent part of the Nazareth place, because that is a legendary place for anybody who's even picked up a guitar in their life.
right. Well, Dick Boak, he was at there for decades, the head of artist relations, and he has a beautiful, beautiful book about Martin guitars. I don't know if you ever, it's a big volume, and he used my photographs in there too. And he was my uh, connect there. He and wonderful, wonderful guy who just retired a few years ago, but he's still involved in the making of guitars. And so I would get published in their newsletters. It was called the Sounding Board that they did every month, and
Oh,
or maybe quarterly. I can't remember. But and then he was instrumental in getting my photographs into the museum there,
oh man.
which I
No,
still
that
haven't been to, but other people have, and they've told me. So
right. I love that. That is fabulous. I mean, there was just an absolute incredible smorgasbord of things that happened for you as you went through the staff photographing, becoming parts of different places. Looking back over the 2000s, maybe prior to the book coming out or whatever, is there anything that jumps out at you as a photographic memory or two that we didn't hit that really said, "Wow"?
well, I think I was, no, I think just all the 7 years of shooting that festival, uh,
Yes.
shooting here, and then getting into another festival here, or another concert series here, where I was the staff photographer or chief photographer for. We had these the Levitt pavilions, which exist. I mean, there's one in I think they're national. There's a
Right.
handful of them. There's one in Connecticut, actually. There's one in Colorado, I believe.
Mm.
But they had two of them here in LA. They still have one in LA, in MacArthur Park.
Ooh.
Uh,
Wow.
I mean, I got to photograph Jimmy Webb doing MacArthur Park in MacArthur Park, for example.
Oh my God. I don't think that I can take it.
Right. They gave him a cake.
Yeah, that is
Um,
that's
I mean,
classic.
he's so brilliant. And I had photographed him at the bitter end in New York.
Oh,
So it was really interesting to I actually printed up it was a juxtaposition of, he just kind of a profile shot of him at the piano, playing at the bitter end and then playing here. But the Levitt Pavilions were great. Their thing was 100 100 concerts, free concerts every summer. So needless to say, I didn't shoot 100, especially because they'd have it going on at MacArthur Park and then also out here in Pasadena, another
Right.
one of their venues at the same time. There were a couple I think I ran from one to the other, but that was great because it was all genres of music, and um, that was a great opportunity for me because again, um, a lot of it was like really grassroots music, and people could come for free, and it wasn't one of these high-priced, overly marketed concert series or concert venues with a zillion photographers all vying for the same shot. And now that we're digital, of course, and have been
Right.
for a long time, yeah, shooting hundreds and hundreds. I mean, you're bound to get something. You're bound to get something. It's not the art that it used to be, of
No,
course.
you're
Or
right now, especially with these.
yeah,
It
yeah,
is
and
just,
I use them. I love them. I
yeah,
absolutely.
yeah,
And I
absolutely.
love that they get better and better. And but obviously when I shoot a show, I don't shoot it with an iPhone unless I'm
Right.
just looking for a
No,
friend,
I
and
couldn't see Sherry Burnett with a phone at a concert shooting, even though it'd be a beautiful, phenomenal picture. I would think you'd still
yeah,
have.
I've always been an icon girl.
What's continued to happen is the work you've done even years ago, and you're continuing to do work these days, but stuff continues to roll up like this Rock and Roll Hall of Fame closes out a Chuck Berry tribute with your picture. I mean,
Right.
it doesn't really, it can't get almost better than that. I mean, the Kennedy Center honors with Bonnie, that again, and I've asked that before, but that stuff must make you feel real good about what you've been doing.
Oh, it does. And some of it's a surprise. Some
I
I don't.
bet.
Yeah. Because I do have my well, it's just the tip of the iceberg of my images are with Getty Images. And so a lot
Oh,
of those shows, some
perfect.
of the shows actually Rock Hall of Fame are really great. They come to me directly for
Oh,
the
good.
images. But some of the others, they are all Kennedy Honors, Grammys, those kinds of shows. They pretty much go through Getty, which is um, it's a clearinghouse for millions of images.
Oh,
But
that's
I'm
fantastic.
always honored when they choose mine, of course, and
Sure.
that does happen a lot. And and then I do get a lot of images chosen for the memoriams.
Right.
Like recently, Peter Yarrow was, all the news programs and Dateline and New York Times and all that.
Oh, totally.
And I do, it's meaningful to me that my images end up being the ones that people remember,
Yes.
amongst the images. I'm not the only one, but amongst the images that people remember an artist by. And sometimes they are chosen as the shot for
The
their.
main shot. Oh, that's so wonderful. I mean, so far, I guess, if I'm reading it correctly, this year, you've already had stuff being used by the New York Times, CBS News. What was used on CBS and ABC News?
That was the Peter Yarrow shot.
Oh, that's
Yeah.
wonderful. And then Dateline.
Dateline was the same thing. Those were all, they just all hit at once when Peter died. And,
Oh,
But
that,
but this year also there's been American Songwriter has used a photograph of mine from In Excess, which was from Top of the Pops. That was another one of the they were one of the other artists. I mean, the artists on Top of the Pops, just the numerous Depeche Mode,
yeah.
LL Cool J. I mean, Belinda Carlisle. I mean, such an amalgam of different pop music artists.
Oh, yeah.
And but yeah, so I've been fortunate in those. I mean, sometimes I know when my photographs are being used, and other times it's a surprise.
Right.
If I license them directly, I usually know. Um,
Right.
Although the Rock Hall of Fame, you don't know until after the show. But yeah, there was the Chuck Berry finale, and then there was the Tina Turner finale, which was really crazy. Maybe I can show it to you here.
When was the Chuck Berry photograph taken?
That was taken in the 70s here in LA.
Great.
Yeah, and yeah, he was uh, he was a great artist to photograph. Let me put it that way.
Oh, I bet.
It's just,
Just with that, going back and forth like that and stuff like
oh
that. I
yeah.
love that. Oh,
Well,
there you go.
here's Tina.
There's Tina. Yeah,
That was the there we go.
yeah, that's a beauty. And then she's right here near me too, in a black and
Oh,
white
right.
version.
Oh my God. Yeah, exactly. And they colorized it, obviously, for
Oh,
the
that's no, that's
thing.
spectacular. Yes,
Yeah,
that
it looks great.
we're gonna
So,
be we're gonna be displaying some of these full, and they're gonna be amazing. Coming up in May,
yes.
featured speaker at the
Yes.
UCLA's Herb Alpert School. Now, I'm telling you, I grew up with his music embedded in my soul because of my parents.
Oh,
And
wow.
then fast forward to about 10 or 12 years ago, and I interviewed him. And one
Oh,
of the
oh,
greatest moments of my life. And
oh,
then it
wow.
was all brought up to even a bigger thing by meeting him in person at the Birchmere when he played with his wife. And he's still alive and still cranking. I mean, his 90s now. But
I'll
the
tell you
Herb,
something.
what's that?
I'm interrupting you, I know, but
No,
I
please,
tell you
please.
something really funny that I noticed. I was looking at something about the UCLA, music department, and I don't know where my talk is going to be. I am going to be doing a conversation there,
Right.
but they do have a room or a part of the campus, and you'll love this. It's called Lonnie Hall.
Oh, really?
Yes, I just noticed that,
Oh, that is phenomenal.
isn't
Oh,
it?
that's classic. And that's going to be it's for the in conversation with dot 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 thing, right? And
Yes,
you're
and
going to be
that's
talking about your world.
mhm. Yep,
Oh,
and on May 21st, and I don't really even know that much more about it yet, but I don't know if I'll get to do a slideshow, but I know I'm going to be doing, you know, speaking about, the photography career and artists that I've photographed and
oh.
how it all came to be, and I guess where I'm at now.
Well,
So,
I'm telling you, just we could have gone on for 5 hours because there are so many wonderful pieces of this life that you had. And again, I think one of the greatest parts of it is not only you getting to do those things growing up and learning photography and seeing these people who have become legends of our time, but that all that stuff is coming back, and all the stuff that you've given with your amazing skills behind that camera is now becoming wonderful, meaningful parts of people's lives. And again, the memorial parts, but also the cross sections of where these stuff arises. So congratulations, Sherry,
thank you.
with your life and a career doing this. With Eye of the Music, where can people get that book?
Well, they can get it at
Yes.
sherrybarnettphotography.com.
Uh,
Sherrybarnettphotography.com.
Yeah, that's what I
Um,
figured. And that'll be
yeah.
posted below you for the entire show. The link will be right there. And they should go because it is such a ride to watch the work of somebody like you, and also the stories and things like that. One thing I didn't mention, I wanted to bring up real quick, was the Beatles pictures.
Yeah.
We talked a little bit about it prior, but what was that event? What was the reason you got to take pictures?
Oh, well, those are separate events, but they were, I realized that I had photographed each of the Beatles separately.
Right.
And
Oh.
the first, though, was a very, it's just kind of an unusual circumstance.
And when was this?
This was in 71, I
Okay.
believe. That Yoko was doing one of her performance pieces at
Nice.
Philharmonic Hall in Manhattan. And there was some kind of conductor's strike or something, and she couldn't conduct the orchestra. So what she did was she let the show go on, and she conducted from her seat because that, I guess, she was able to get away with it. And she had John next to her.
Oh,
And so I photographed them, just sitting in the front row together and her doing her thing. And then somehow there must have been some little entourage, and somehow I ended up at some restaurant after the show. And I have this one, there was no light whatsoever. And I actually had never published the photo because of that. That's why I didn't get in the first edition of the book,
Right.
because, well, this doesn't even, but it was John and Yoko sitting there drinking and smoking cigarettes. And it was like, okay, it doesn't really matter about the quality because it was just the moment
Right.
that apparently no one else captured
Oh,
because, and if you Google this event, uh, it's like it never existed. You
oh,
cannot find this event anywhere. And but I was doing a little like photojournalism at the time, and I actually wrote an article, a piece about it for Rock Magazine that ran with those pictures.
oh, perfect.
71. So anyway, that was the long answer about. So that was the John portion, or John and Yoko, and then I photographed George Harrison at a press conference in Beverly Hills for when he started the Dark Horse label, and there were a lot of other photographers there too. But I just had a beautiful portrait of George and thought it was
Perfect.
there, and then a Wings concert
Ah,
where Ringo showed up at the end and.
oh,
Uh, Gave him flowers on stage, and then the last thing
oh.
was a thing that Ringo did for a TV show. He was involved with in Hollywood. So I thought, they deserve to be in there. Peace and love, Ringo.
No, I love that. My first interview as a music journalist was with Ryoko. And
That's it, really.
she was in Liverpool, of all places, too, on the phone. And we talked for 20 minutes, half hour. And she could not have been nicer and sweeter about John. It was about his art, because he's got a whole, they've done those
Oh yeah.
post life art exhibits, and she'll take them around in the country. They brought it to Alexandria, Virginia. Anyway, amazing people. But that is what a wonderful thing to say thank you for this time with you, to hear that thing about the Beatles. I wish you the very best. I want to keep in touch about what things are going. Anything with Mustangs of the West coming up, or are you guys
Thanks for the
hanging?
bus. Well, we're going to be getting together again in the spring, or late spring, maybe right after my UCLA date, and doing some gigs out here. I know Holly Montgomery
Oh
would love
yeah.
to back east, and then I come and meet you, which would be great. We're just gonna kind of a wait and see. The last thing we had released was the Doolin Dalton single cover,
Oh
uh,
yay.
which hadn't
Perfect.
been recorded since the Eagles recorded it 50 years ago for the Desperado album. And it's so many little connections though, because Henry Dill shot that album cover, and then he shot some of our more recent
Oh,
photographs of Mustangs of the West. Then uh,
classic.
and then Jackson Browne was one of the writers on Doolin Dalton, and Jackson Browne showed up at our last show that we did in LA in September.
What?
You didn't know that?
I think I might have heard it briefly, but I don't remember hearing. Oh
Yeah.
my God. Yeah, I did
And he,
remember. Oh, that is.
yeah, and he ended up going to our merch table and buying everything we ever recorded, which was
Oh,
the hugest compliment. We haven't heard from him since. And what's funny is that it was the week before Doolin Dalton was released, and so we didn't play it, which would have been just, but whatever. I've sent it to different, sources and hoping he's heard it by now, and
oh,
you
that
know,
is so amazing. One of your
yeah.
early photography subjects.
Yes,
Another
absolutely.
one that still
Yeah. I
comes into
first
your life.
I photographed him at McCabe's. I did a section on McCabe's guitar shop in my book too, and
Oh,
Jackson in it, and everyone from Jackson to T-Bone Burnett, Elvis Costello,
oh,
Taj Mahal, all the legends that have played McCabe's. Ironically, the show that Jackson came to was an outdoor concert series sponsored by McCabe's that Mustangs of the West did. So, there are all these like, little things that just keep coming together and
totally.
connecting the dots, like, pulling the threads through another direction. And it's that's a really exciting, the magic of all that is what's really exciting to me, how life
Sure.
happens in these ways, since we have so many other things that are not as positive going on, you know um
Right.
music, I think, really pulls us through.
Yeah, it really does a job for everybody. And it's made my TV career, which ended after about 37 years. I was just done. Music has taken over, journalism and singing, and I never expected it to be like it is. But I thank you so much for being on Living on Music with me again.
Oh, I loved it.
Well, we had a blast, and I'm going to keep in touch on what's going on with you and all this stuff. But give my best to the Mustangs of the West, and also good luck with this continued saga of legendary photography that you're doing. And let's keep in touch.
All right.
Talk
Thank
soon.
you, Steve.